let's pivot to wide receiver. Let's start with Jamar Chase. He's going the highest, and it seems like the cat's already out of the bag with Jamar Chase. We can't even get him at a sneaky value because he's going 47th overall. That's late fourth round per underdog ADP. That's half-point PPR that we're looking at there. But when we talk about our projections, we're talking about, 110 to 130 targets for Jamar Chase year one. And it seems that that's what everyone else is projecting too. So how do you feel about this late fourth round ADP here? Because you're essentially taking him as either your wide receiver one after you got three running backs, or a strong wide receiver two that you're pairing with a guy who will be that bona fide wide receiver one.
I actually like the ADP because when I look at the tier of guys he's going around right now, I think it's fair. I think this is actually perfectly accurate. I'm not fading him here. I'm not saying he's a value. I think he's right where he should be because I look at the guys right in front of him in terms of ADP. You've got Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, DJ Moore, Mike Evans. I'm definitely taking all those guys over Jamar Chase for 2021. And you look at the guys behind him, and you do start to get into some question marks. You got Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, Kenny Golladay. So he's sandwiched right in that group. I think some of the veterans I just mentioned are safer. Like a Cooper Kupp is a much safer pick than a Jamar Chase. But with Jamar Chase, you're getting the upside of the talent that he has. He's proven everything to us. He has the draft capital. He has the college production. Now he gets the situation in the NFL. So everything's pointing up for Jamar Chase. It's just a matter of how quickly is he going to acclimate to the NFL. Even a guy like A.J. Brown had a phenomenal rookie season in Tennessee, but it took him deep into the season to consistently start making plays to get him to that high-tier wide receiver one caliber of wide receiver in the NFL that he was in year two and beyond. So with Jamar Chase, I don't think it's a matter of is he going to be a good NFL receiver. I really believe he will. To me, it's just a matter of how quickly is he going to get there and how much risk am I willing to take to bet on that happening in 2021. So I expect a good season from Chase. I have him projected for over 120 targets in this Bengals offense. I think he's going to be over 1,000 yards as a rookie. So that ADP makes sense to me. And if you want a little bit of excitement and upside on your roster in round four, back around four, early round five, I think Chase is a fine pick.
The biggest concern that we're going to have with all these rookies is how long it actually takes them to get up to speed, to get fully onboarded onto the offense, and to get their coaches to trust them enough to draw up plays for them. The downside with Jamar Chase is that he already has two other strong wide receivers that he's competing with in that Bengals wide receiver room, to where the team doesn't necessarily need to force the ball to Jamar Chase right away. But you got to imagine, just based on the rapport that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase showed back in 2019, that there's going to be a connection there, especially near the red zone, in the end zone. Here's a question for you, Ax. Here's one I haven't really spent too much time thinking about, but I have a feeling that once folks are on the clock, it's going to creep into the back of their minds. Do you have any concerns with Jamar Chase not playing football throughout 2020?
No.
Is that something for you? Are you fading him at all from the standpoint of, look, he's got to get, conditioned, he's got to get ready to go? To me, it's not. I'm glad to hear that it's not for you. Don't let that cause you to fade Jamar Chase or any of these rookies that sat out the last year. Yes, it's fun to get all in on Devonta Smith because we have that recency bias with the Heisman campaign, and we'll talk about him here in a moment. But the best part about Jamar Chase's situation is that the volume is going to be there. And we've talked about the Bengals a ton. You can go check out a whole breakdown on the Bengals offense on our channel. We talked about this when we talked about Jamar Chase coming out of the draft in his landing spot. And if you're getting him in the fourth round, the only thing that sucks, but you can hedge against this in your draft, is that, look, he might start out the year a little bit slow. So why don't you circle back and get a name like Will Fuller in the 7th round? Circle back and get a Chase Claypool in the 6th.
Steph, let's talk about this next tier, if you will, of wide receiver. I'm going to talk about two guys here. I think they might both be in individual tiers of their own. But first is Devonta Smith. You mentioned him earlier. Right now he's going in the mid-7th, 155th overall. And then a round later, we have Jaylen Waddle going in the late 8th. Steph, with Devonta Smith, I mean, of all these rookies, he should see the most targets in his rookie season. How do you feel about him in the mid-7th? I mean, if you're getting him there, you're getting him probably as your wide receiver 4 or your flex if you went running back heavy early. Talk to me about Devonta Smith. I think that's a great ADP for him. If I can have him as a flex or as a wide receiver 4, and he's someone I can wait on once again to see how he acclimates to the NFL, I'm taking that all day.
Yeah, I mean, there's only two things to worry about with Smitty here. It's that, him being undersized is going to hurt his play, which based on what we've seen in college, that doesn't seem to be the case. He's exceptional against press, exceptional against man. And that's been shown in a number of different metrics, including reception perception from Matt Harmon. The other thing is Jalen Hurts, both from the volume standpoint of how many of those dropbacks is Jalen Hurts going to just take off on his own, a guy that was averaging 10 rushing attempts per game last year.
Mm-hmm.
Though that's 10 pass attempts that he's taking away, presumably. I'm sure some of those are design plays, but presumably 10 attempts that could be going to Devonta Smith. But he goes into a situation where he can be the alpha dog from week 1. He can be a target magnet right away. They can move Jalen Reagor to play the big slot role, who can run deep routes in the slot. He can play the Cooper Kupp role there, the Tyler Boyd role, if you will. And then you can have Devonta Smith outside playing the Marvin Harrison role, playing the Terry McLaurin role, where he is a wide receiver 1 who's receiving 7 to 10 targets a game. And the Eagles are in a pretty loaded division. So I do expect there to be a lot of shootouts against the Cowboys, against the Washington football team, and against the New York Giants that have a reloaded offense as well. So all of those things get me excited about Devonta Smith in redraft. And I'm not scared at all to come out and say that Devonta Smith should be the most targeted rookie wide receiver in this entire class, just like Justin Jefferson last year. Now, volume doesn't necessarily mean what it means for, let's say, a running back, right? Why we love Najee Harris is because he is going to get all this volume. We don't necessarily know if the volume is going to lead to production and efficiency for Devonta Smith. I guess that could be another thing to factor in is, look, if he's just catching the ball and then running out of bounds because he doesn't want to take hits, or catching the ball and getting hit right away, we could run into some efficiency issues. The offense as a whole could break down because it's still pretty raw too. But all those things are baked into that 7th round. I mean, the names that we're talking about here are Will Fuller, which is another one that I love. Then, Jerry Judy. That's probably a pretty strong debate for me between Devonta Smith and Jerry Judy for this year. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that one. And then we're talking about Juju Smith-Schuster.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, Curtis Samuel, who I'm way above consensus on. So I'm taking Samuel at that range. But then Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, as the list goes down. So I think there is a clear drop-off around that 8th round at the wide receiver position. So I'm trying to have 2, if not 4, wide receivers already on my roster by the time we hit the 8th round. But who would you go between Jerry Judy and Devonta Smith?
Man, that's so tough. I'm still going to go Devonta Smith because I think he is the number 1 on his team. I love it's tough because I love Jerry Judy to have a breakout season this year as well. Certainly if the quarterback situation pans out, it's going to impact my opinion on Judy. I'd love to see Teddy take that job. I'd obviously love to see one of these other quarterbacks that seems to be on the trade market play there as well. I'm not going to mention any names. You can probably imagine who I'm thinking of. But I think both these guys are in the same tier. I mean, it's splitting hairs to me to deciding between the two of them. I'll lean Smith today. You might ask me next week, and I'll lean Judy. It's all about tiers at this range in the draft. And you mentioned a couple of the guys behind Smith, but I would take him and Judy ahead of some of the guys going in front of them in ADP. You look at Deebo Samuel, I'll take Smith and Judy over Deebo Samuel. You look at DJ Chark, I'll take him over DJ Chark. Even over Chase Claypool. Might be a hot take, but I'm taking Devonta Smith and Jerry Judy over Chase Claypool right now, even in redraft. So, all those guys are probably in the same tier, but those are the 2 guys leading that tier for me. So I do love the value with Smith. Steph, let's pivot over quickly. We don't have to talk about it for too long because I already know your thoughts. Jaylen Waddle going in the back of the 8th, going only like a round after his own teammate Will Fuller. We've had this debate.
It's not going to stop.
Waddle as a prospect. You were out on him. I'm in on him. But even for me, I mean, the late 8th is a little bit rich for Waddle. I get what he can do down the field. I get what he can do after the catch with the ball in his hands. But from a volume perspective, he easily could be the number 3 wide receiver target for Miami this season, behind Devontae Parker, behind Will Fuller. You have Mike Gesicki there as well. You have Tua, who's probably not going to be a high-volume passer on a team with a good defense. So to me, Jaylen Waddle is one of these boom or bust. If he breaks the 50, 60-yard touchdown, he has a solid week, but that's about it. I think of like a Nelson Aguilar from last season. I feel like that's kind of like the upside we're looking at with Jaylen Waddle. You can stream him here and there, get some good weeks, but I have trouble believing that Waddle is going to take over as a target hog in Miami that you can trust starting week in and week out. And for that reason, the late 8th is a little bit too rich for me right now. Now, Waddle later on in his career, look at our Dynasty content if you haven't heard us break that down. I think into 2022, when Will Fuller is gone, he's on a 1-year contract, and Devontae Parker's a year older, we start to get a little bit interesting on Waddle's outlook. But for 2021, it's going to be an uphill battle for him to have consistent fantasy production.
Love the Nelson Aguilar comp there, just from a fantasy perspective. One that came to mind for me was Hollywood Brown last year. Was another guy that was a high upside boom-bust option. You're taking about the 8th, 9th round. Jaylen Waddle fits into that range as far as ADP goes, but I'm not in on him, man. Give me Laviska Shenault, who's going 2 spots lower than him in underdog ADP. Give me
Antonio Brown.
Another good one. Great call out there. As we look down the list, we got names like Mike Williams, who's pretty appealing there, with Herbert ascending. Hopefully he can be healthy for a whole season. We might finally see the Mike Williams breakout. But, I mean, I would move Waddle down to that Mike Williams range, to be honest with you, man. These are both like these just – you don't know what's going to happen on a weekly basis.
You hope for a touchdown. Yep.
Maybe even 2 or 3 touchdowns if things start going their way. But you're right, man. I think really what you're going to see more from Waddle this year when he gets on the field is going to be special teams play. He's going to be returning kicks and punts.
Yeah, I'll scoop him in DFS now and then, I'm sure. But, Steph, I want to go ahead and get into this last tier for today's purposes of wide receivers. Guys going in double-digit rounds. We have Rondale Moore going in the 12th, Elijah Moore going around the same range as Rondale. Then you have Terrace Marshall in the 13th, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 14th, Kadarius Toney in the 15th, Josh Palmer in the 15th. So a lot of names there, a lot of rookie wide receivers. This is the range of flyers in your draft. 12th plus round, you're looking for guys that have that upside and breakout potential. Of all the guys I just named, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Terrace Marshall, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kadarius Toney, Josh Palmer. Steph, I want you to pick 1 or 2 of them in those double-digit rounds that you are scooping up in all your drafts because you think they're a sleeper that has that upside value. I want to hear it. I think I know who it's going to be, but I'll kick it over to you and see who you got.
Yeah, the first one will definitely be Elijah Moore. I think he's head and shoulders number 1 in this tier. The only thing holding me back from putting Moore even higher, putting him in that 10th, even 9th round, would be the fact that Jamison Crowder, as of right now, is still signed. He's still on the team. He is not cut yet. Now, that could...
The second he gets cut, that ADP is going to climb, I have no doubt.
Exactly. That was my next point. So, yeah, that's... And same thing for a lot of players this year. Same thing for Mac Jones. Same thing for Justin Fields and Trey Lance. All these situations where it's like, if we start the year and the incumbent is gone or is not going to play or gets hurt or whatever might happen, you're going to see these values start to skyrocket for these guys. But as of right now, Elijah Moore is the clear name to take. And even if Jamison Crowder is there, I still like Moore for later in the season. He'll probably start the year on waiver wires, whether that's because he's not picked up or because teams just start to drop these guys once they're not producing. Could be a guy that you circle back on, pick him up off waivers down the stretch and see if he can take over as Zach Wilson's number 1 target. He has one of the best profiles all around in this class. He has the athleticism. He has the college production. He has the early declare. He's done it against top competition with A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. So you got to love Elijah Moore. And the next one, you already know it. It's my boy Amon-Ra St. Brown. I've scooped him up in almost every single draft lately. He's going 93rd overall. That's late 14th round. Give me that all day because this is one of the last guys in this range, if not the last guy in this range, that should be the wide receiver 1 on the team, should see the most targets. And one of the things I like about Amon-Ra St. Brown is he's playing with a quarterback that's known for not having an exceptional average depth of target, and all the other wide receivers on his team are field stretchers. Brashad Perriman's a field stretcher. Quintez Cephas is what you typically think of as a guy who's going to stretch the field, play that downfield contested catch role like Kenny Galladay. Tyrell Williams is just a pure speedster. He's pretty one-dimensional. So you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who can catch the ball deep. He was very efficient in college, but can also just be a target magnet underneath. Could play a Jarvis Landry role on an offense that's probably going to be throwing the ball a ton. How efficient they are from a touchdown perspective, who knows? How excited are we for Jared Goff? Probably not that excited. But the fact that in the 14th round, I'm getting a guy who could be the wide receiver one for his team is phenomenal. And so even in Dynasty, I'm grabbing him early just because I want that value increase after year one when the production is there. And then one other thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know we've talked about his brother being a current pro for the Packers, but then his dad, John Brown, was a 2-time Mr. Universe, a 3-time Mr. World. This guy was one of the premier bodybuilders in the 1980s. and honestly, I was going back and watching some ASB film, some of this Amon-Ra St. Brown film at USC. This guy's exceptional just strength-wise when you watch him on film. I'm not a big film grinder. I don't know the ins and outs of everything football. But when I'm watching it, the way that he's stiff-arming guys, the way that he moves with the ball in his hands.
Holy smokes.
He can be pretty aggressive. Now, I'm going down narrative street in the hardest way here. But I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot, man. I think he has the athleticism to get it done.
I'm looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown's father, John Brown, right now. This dude is an absolute unit. So, well, yeah. I mean, I'll buy the take, Steph. And John Brown's also a receiver for the Vegas Raiders. So, same name. Coincidence? I think not. Ironically, you mentioned his ADP. Right now he's going at 168th overall. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going right behind Emmanuel Sanders. What are we doing, people? Christian Kirk. What are we doing, people? And John Brown. Ironically, going just in front of Amon-Ra. So I'm with you. You got a guy who could be the number one on his team in Amon-Ra St. Brown as an absolute value in these drafts. I'm taking him all day. And I'm with you on Elijah Moore. I'm all over that Elijah Moore hype train. Even if Crowder doesn't get cut, part of me hopes he doesn't, because then he's actually going to be a value. Because if that narrative street starts to take place when Crowder gets cut, it's like, oh, Elijah Moore's the new Crowder plus. Like, people aren't dumb. They're going to catch on to that, and his ADP might get him to a place where he's overvalued. And I want to get Elijah Moore in the 13th round. So I hope that my draft and all my drafts and all my leagues can take place while Elijah Moore is still going in the 13th, because I think it is a tremendous value. And we've hit on some other guys here. I mean, Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall, Kadarius Toney, Josh Palmer. I think all these guys have some merit to being sleepers. I think you and I both are clearly the highest on Elijah and Amon-Ra at their values, but go and check out our old videos. We have several videos out on these rookie wide receivers. We hit on Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall, Toney, Josh Palmer. We hit on some of these guys in depth, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to their rookie years, because a couple of these guys will break out as rookies, I have no doubt.
Yeah, Rondale Moore going late 12th right now, 144th overall. I don't mind it, but I expect more from him as he ascends throughout his career. Still have a lot of guys that he's going to have to fight through on that depth chart, including a guy that's just as fast as him and was brought in to pretty much play the same role, Andy Isabella. That project's kind of fallen off. But, even when we look at Andy Isabella, like, that's still a guy that he's going to have to compete with. And then you have Christian Kirk, and then you have DeAndre Hopkins, and then you have Chase Edmonds, all these other options. And then you have Kyler Murray running the ball himself. So it's just hard from a volume perspective to see it being there, whereas with the other two, I think you can see it. Now, one more I want to talk about before we talk about Kyle Pitts is Josh Palmer. Because
yes,
I didn't even really look into this guy until he was drafted by the LA Chargers. Right now, it's Keenan Allen. Then it's Jared Cook. It's
Mike Williams.
It's Trey McKitty. It's Austin Eckler.
Jalen Guyton.
Jalen Yikeson. That was terrible. But for Josh Palmer, there's nothing that I see when I look at his profile that he really pops off the page. But you just have to take the gamble on this guy. This is one of those things where, look, you have to know what you don't know. We don't know everything as these armchair analysts sitting at home thinking we know everything about football and just looking at the stats. Obviously, the Chargers felt like Josh Palmer was the guy to bring in as a weapon for Herbert. Now, look, I'm not even saying I like Josh Palmer as a player. I don't know the first thing about him. I haven't watched the tape. I can look at some of his Tennessee production, and it's not great, but we also know the Tennessee passing game wasn't great either. The 22.8% target share as a senior is nothing to laugh at. But I think he has to be worth the dart throw. If you're going to try to go out,
he's absolutely free.
You're getting him in right now
last round,
15th, 16th round. So if we're just talking about these late names to take, it's Josh Palmer, actually over Kadarius Toney. Palmer's moved up for me. I've kind of fallen off Toney a little bit in redraft. But Josh Palmer just has that appeal as a pure dart throw that could be. I mean, you're literally, again, going back to Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's a guy that, look, if we know Keenan Allen's going to be there, but Keenan Allen hasn't exactly been healthy his whole career.
Same for Mike Williams.
Same for Mike Williams, right? So I don't know. There's a chance for this guy to get on the field, and if he shows out, I mean, this is going to be someone that everyone's going to rush to the waiver wire for. Maybe you can beat the hype train by picking him up at the last pick of your draft.